Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So, I want to talk about living without why. W-H-Y. Living without asking why. And just as we were sitting for a moment, I remembered a story, something that really happened, that my divination teacher taught me. I learned divination from Lu Ming, a Taoist teacher, and he grew up in New England, and he was at one time a student of Chogyam Trungpa's. And there was some kind of spiritual center in New England, I don't know what it was, but a Buddhist center that he was associated with. The Lama who was running this center, this was when Ming was a younger man. He actually isn't alive anymore, he died a few years ago, but I can't remember the whole story, which I wish I could actually, but something made this Lama think that maybe it wasn't a good idea for them to stay in the center, that they should move. And so he asked Ming to do a divination about it. And Ming was out in the woods, and 6 ravens, he said they were really huge birds, landed right in front of him and started cawing in different patterns. And he said he actually fainted. Ming was very frail. He probably weighed about 110 pounds. And his health was never, he was never that hale and hearty. So he saw these big birds. He said the birds were like this big. But when he saw them, he fainted out of fright. And then when he came to, they were cawing in different rhythms. And according to him, they were cawing in the numbers that corresponded to different lines of a 6-line hexagram in the I Ching, probably known to most of you. And he went back and he reported that these ravens had given him a divination, and that the divination was that it was disastrous for this group to stay in this center in New England. And the very next day they packed up and left. So this is about living in the livingness of communication, where you're able to recognize wisdom and you're just following it because it's wisdom. Because you feel that it's wisdom. Because you have a direct perception that it's wisdom. Not because you questioned it closely and with your rational mind decided that it might be wisdom. So it would be a good idea to follow it because it made sense. Oftentimes, the instructions that we get from wisdom do not make sense according to our ordinary mind. And then when we start questioning them with our ordinary mind, we just end up not really following wisdom. We end up dictating to life, or trying to, which is ultimately something that we will fail at miserably. It may seem like we succeed at times when we are dictating to life, or going in a very willful, headstrong way. It may seem at times that we succeed at various things, but ultimately our lives will be very impoverished if we don't learn how to perceive through all of our senses what wisdom is saying to us. So when I say perception, I mean a direct apprehension that we learn through training to recognize. a specific sort of wisdom feeling, you could call it. Well, some of us, all of us, really have access to that already, right? Sometimes, maybe even often, you're trying to make a decision and you have a feeling. You have a feeling, a definite feeling of this is the right way and this is not the right way. The point of spiritual practice and the fun of it, the adventure of it, if you will, is that you learn to live that way all the time. Where you're never asking why. You might ask how. How? Or what? What is being communicated? How does this work? So, for instance, doing ritual, one of the things I noticed as I started to have more direct perception was that I started to have spontaneous understandings of how ritual worked. The question of why it worked doesn't even come up, because you're doing it and it's working. And you're having a direct experience of it working. So why would you ask, why does it work? When you know how it works, when you know what it's supposed to do, when you know what it's communicating, then the question why becomes completely irrelevant. In the same way, when you train yourself to listen to the feeling of wisdom, to pay attention to it, right? And to follow whatever you think it's telling you, for better or worse. I mean, when I say for better or worse, I mean training means training. If you're training to do snowboarding, you are going to have accidents. Right? Just the same way as you're training to listen to wisdom, sometimes you're going to confuse that with your karmic fixations. But the point is that that spiritual practice trains us to listen to wisdom and to identify wisdom and to become accustomed to the feeling of wisdom communicating with us so that we can follow it. The question of why anything is always irrelevant, always completely irrelevant. It's hard to explain in a culture where why is sort of the big question that everyone seems to have. But from the perspective of this tradition and just my own experience, there is only one answer to the question why, because that's what God is doing in this moment. That's the only answer that makes sense to me. Things go well, things go wrong. You have a crappy childhood, you have a great childhood. Someone loves you, someone doesn't love you. Your job loves you, your job fires you. The answer to why is because this is what God is doing in this moment. This is the circumstance.
I think it's similar to like asking, have you ever asked kids like when they're in the middle of playing, like why are you playing?
Yeah, they just sort of look at you blankly.
That's the most absurd, like not important question.
Exactly, that's a great example.
Yeah.
If you ask a kid why they're doing anything, they'll look at you and they might shrug, but that's all the answer you're going to get. Right? But to ask how can I follow wisdom? How does this work? How is this affecting me? What is the wisdom? Those are wonderful questions. And it's useful to think about, what do you get out of the answers to the whys? More whys are just sort of bankable explanations, right? How does it make you feel to hear the answer or the presumed answer to a why question? What are you doing with that answer? How is it helping you in any way? Usually when people ask a why question, my sense is that they're comparing the answer they get to some concepts that they have about reasonableness and truthfulness and whatever matches whatever they're bringing to that why question, whatever matches whatever they are already having as their bank of explanations of things that are plausible to them. And so you end up just staying in a very narrow range of experience when You're living through the why. But maybe, I don't know, you can let me know, but maybe you get some sort of temporary feeling of something being laid to rest, some temporary cessation of anxiety, because you've been so trained to think that understanding the why of everything will bring you peace. But it won't. And how do I know that? Because the people who incessantly ask why are the least peaceful people I have ever met. You know, everything can be discovered through direct experience. When I say that people who incessantly ask why are the least peaceful people I've ever met, it's because I've just experienced something. I don't hold a concept about it. It's just my experience. Really, success in this tradition means living through this very expanded experiential capacity. If it means anything, it might mean that. Not getting it or explaining it or understanding it in an intellectual way. Not feeling secure and safe in an ordinary way. None of these things really have anything to do with waking up. But I think it is very useful to consult your own experience about the why questions. What are the why questions doing for you? What are the why answers doing for you? Right. What do you do with explanations that don't match your expectations? What does that do for you? How does that make you feel? Right? When you ask a why, and then the answer doesn't agree with you, it gives you why indigestion. See, why is suffering, right? Being in the why lane is being in a suffering position. Being in the what and how lane, being in the listening lane, being in the following lane, using all your senses all the time, not just your why mind, is how you become skillful, how you start feeling nourished. Why is not nourishing? Right? Why is a rice cake? It's a dry rice cake. Maybe it's a Ritz cracker or a potato chip. Really, but try to think seriously about what why does for you. How do you feel about why? How do you feel when you ask why? How do you feel when you get answers to why? How long does the feeling of satisfaction last after one why gets answered? And what happens when why doesn't agree with you? And then where does it all leave you? Like, really, I'm asking the wires to consult your experience directly.
Why?
You're a champion wire. Yeah, but how tortured are you by your whys?
Oh, a lot.
You're very tortured by your whys.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because, a lot of how we feel is training. We've been trained to feel that why is very important. And that why the answer to why, or the right answer to why, not the wrong answer, but the right answer to why will bring us peace.
I think it's like you talk about often with like psychotherapy and I think that sort of approach is sort of getting to the bottom of things and figuring out why you are feeling the way you're feeling. And I definitely feel like I was raised in an environment that was
all of us were
about that.
Yeah, all of us were, right? Yeah. So we have to untrain ourselves if we want to have real contentment and happiness. Because even those whys that, like say in therapy, even if we manage to come up with an acceptable why narrative about why we are the way we are, that is a tiny, 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 tiny geography of explanation compared to what we actually are, which is infinite. If we knew we were infinite, then we wouldn't be so troubled by those little hard patches that need why explanations. And also, for instance, if we have hard experiences in life, which almost everybody does, right? And if you don't have any hard experiences, then likely you're a very fragile person. The hard experiences that we have bring us closer to wisdom in general. So let's say you have a hard childhood, or you are sexually assaulted, or you lose something very important to you, or any one number of any very difficult experiences. If you don't know that you're infinite, then those experiences take up a lot of room in your non-infinite person, right? If you think that your story began when you were born in this life, and your body ends at your skin, and then you have this big experience, let's say, of something like I just mentioned, that takes up a lot of room in this tiny little thing, this tiny little container. And then it looms very, very, very important. But if you start to have a real experience, not just an idea, but a real experience of the infinity of the self and the infinity of your lifetimes, then those things, while still painful, of course, don't seem as important. They don't seem as controlling or defining, and so that they're not as much quite an occasion for suffering.
To me, the question why is often an expression of lack of confidence in reality. Mm-hmm. It's wanting to establish some secure footing, and it comes out of lack of confidence.
How secure do you feel after a lifetime of whys?
Oh, not.
But this isn't funny. I mean, it sounds cute, but we really should ask ourselves these kind of questions. After all this why activity, how do I feel? Do I actually feel any more content or secure? Have I really felt like I explained anything? Do I have a more coherent sense of self now than before? Which is oftentimes what these why questions are seeking. Right.
Yeah.
Think about this Lama. Some weird 110-pound white guy goes out into the woods, says he met 6 ravens and they cawed in a pattern. And then the Lama packs up the center and moves. No questions asked. Well, I mean, just extrapolating from my own experience, I'm sure that Lama had his own sense of communication, right? He wasn't just relying on my friend. He was feeling the situation. He was feeling for the realness of that communication, and he decided it was real, and he decided to leave without hesitation, not knowing what was going to happen, right? Just because wisdom is only happening in the ever-present circumstance. You can't communicate with the wisdom from the future. I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. Because from the perspective of wisdom, there's no past, present, or future. But in any case, from our perspective, we always want to know, okay, I'll follow wisdom, but tell me what's going to happen. Am I going to be okay? Is it going to be okay? Right? Let yourself accompany what's happening. Stop trying to control it or make it into something. Just go along. Most of us, we think what's going on in our heads is more important than what's going on in our bodies and our energy and our emotions. Or we think if we don't have it all lined up in our mind intellectually, then we're in danger. We have to have all our reasons, all our whys lined up before we make a move, otherwise it's not safe. Well, clue, it's not safe. If what you mean by safe is never being upset, everyone you love always loves you back, your house never burns down, you never get sick, you always have enough money, unexpected nasty surprises never happen, you're in the wrong realm. I don't know what realm that would be where that kind of safety exists, but it definitely isn't this one. So the idea is, how can we navigate life's inevitable ups and downs more skillfully? That's the only question. The question isn't how can we be safe. The question is how can we navigate most skillfully. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.